Liza. Welcome to the Little Hedge Grove. And please ignore the setup. This is my bed behind me. But I wanted to share a story with you. As in Druid style, we like to tell stories. But this story is about two different goddesses that I happen to work with, but a little something about it that I had kind of one of those aha moments with that I wanted to share with you because it was something I didn't realize. And to give you a little backstory first, I'm going to have to go back to my original belief before this happened. I always believed that all the gods and goddesses, and this is not a diamond, but it is a crystal, and I believed that, all energy is basically the same energy. The same energy runs through everything in nature, and I still do believe that. Our energy is in the plants, the same energy is in the air, the animals, the people. Everyone has that same energy circulating in different various forms and different various projections of that energy. And that's why we look different. That's why we have different species, different thoughts, different personas. Everything about that is just different ways that this energy, the same energy, is presenting. And the diamond is a good example of it. And again, this is not a diamond, but it's the best example I have in my hand. Because the diamond is one thing, but what happens is when the light hits the diamond, the energy refracts into different areas. So it's really the same thing. It's still the same light that's coming in, but it is going in different directions. It is seen as different colors, different rays, even though it's from the same source. And that's kind of like how I always envisioned everything. And I still believe that, as being a druid and everything, that is sort of how it all works in an analogy kind of a sense. And I have always heard and interacted with the Celtic Goddess Anu. Another name for her is Anne or Anan. And she's heard about in Celtic lore only a little bit, to be honest with you. Not many people probably have heard the name because she gets confused a lot into other Celtic deities. A lot of people say she is the Morrigan. It's not Anu, it's Danu. But I actually would have to disagree. Danu is wonderful, but she is a different goddess with a different energy. And I know that right away because when I look into that goddess and read up about her, I don't feel that connection that I feel with Anu. And Anu's been in my life since I was a little girl. Like, she's been around as a mother figure to me, in almost a very literal sense, to be honest with you. She feels like she's mom or my mother. And who she is according to Celtic legend and my beliefs, that she is the goddess of the gods. She's kind of like that source god who basically, in a theoretical sense, has given birth to all the other gods and goddesses, nature, the fae, animals. She's kind of like if there was a diamond, she would be the light that comes in and then it refracts into all these different areas. And that's kind of my best representational thought process analogy for who she is. But she's always appeared to me as a white figure goddess, meaning she has very, very white hair. She's very silvery white hair, white clothes, white dress, but yet she looks very young. She does not look like an old motherly type of a figure. I've seen visions of her throughout, my youth and my adulthood. I've seen visions of her, meditations and sorts of things. She has a young spirit. She reminds me very much of the Fae herself, where she's ancient. She's like raw nature, as more of like a mother nature type of a source presence, but she appears very young and youthful, like you would envision the Fae type beings. And I do think that there is a tie in the Celtic mythology with some of that, with the whole presence of the Fae in there as well. So moving on, the point of this, yes, she's been in my life since I was a child. She's always been my mother. I've heard her speak, and things like that. She's one of those beings that's kind of always around, but not always around. She speaks when she needs to. She's caring, motherly. She's a very, excuse me, she's a very kind essence to me, but she's not a person's god or a goddess. And what I mean by that is she's nature. She's very nature. She's not here just for people, if that makes sense. And that reminds me as well as the Fae, because people are part of nature. She's not here just for people. And that's going to be a big element with what I discovered, because recently, just the past several months, I've started hearing Kuan Yin. And I know this is a very different turn of direction of, goddess presences and things like that. But I believe it's the house that I'm in. And I'm going to tell you a really quick story. When I first moved into this house a couple years ago, I was outside by my well meditating. And I had this vision. I have a lot of visions. I had this vision during meditation of this woman sitting where my well was, but there was no well. Okay, she was sitting there in that spot on a throne, and she looked just like Kuan Yin. I'm not even joking. I didn't even know who she was at that point. I really didn't know much about it. I'm more into Celtic mythology and that kind of a path. So I did not know who she was. I just saw this presence of this woman, that looked like her. And I kind of let it go at the time. I thought it was a little odd, but I thought it was interesting. But the previous residences before I moved in here had a lot of like Buddha type stuff. I remember around the home during one visit, and I didn't have time to really look it over very closely because I was just there for a very quick, check of the house before I moved in here. So I didn't get a chance to really now what are they into or anything like that. It was a very quick glance. I think they were into it. I have a feeling that Kuan Yin was already attached to this household from who lived here before. And so she kind of started talking to me, obviously, because I'm pretty receptive, or at least I like to think I am. And she started talking to me just a few months ago. And, she was very kind. She's also a very motherly goddess. So my thought process for understanding this was I went back to my diamond philosophy, where I was, what if all of these mother goddesses are all really the same goddess, just under different names and different, cultural takes on these energies? And what if she is really Anu, just, from a different cultural perspective? And I went with that for a bit. I really did, because I really believed in this whole, connection, imagery that I have in my head. And I still do. But I was outside. Again, I'm always outside. But I was outside by my well again. And I have two representations there. One for Anu and one for Kuan Yin. And I was paying my respects to them as a whole, as a whole motherly essence. And suddenly I decided, I don't know why, but I decided to separate it. And I was like, Kuan Yin. And I said, my gratitude to her and those kinds of things. And I turned to my representation of Anu that I have out there, and I just felt it. I totally felt it. It was a completely different feeling. It was a completely different energy source, completely different feeling. And I realized what it was right then. That, like I was saying, the Goddess Anu is more nature. She is raw, wild nature. Yes, she's motherly. But she's the mother of all things. She's the mother of gods and goddesses. She's the mother of people. She's the mother of the animals, the plants, the fae. She is like raw nature. That's the best way I can describe her. And it felt so much more comforting when I realized that fact. It was like, all of a sudden I knew who this real mother of, I like to think of her as a mother of mine, because she's been a very supportive presence in my life since I was a child. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's mom. That's my mother. That's my mother goddess right there. That's her. It's not Kuan Yin. I'm like, so who is Kuan Yin? And I realized the difference is almost potent. That the difference between Kuan Yin, she is also very motherly, but she feels almost grandmotherly to me, which is odd because Kuan Yin is obviously a much, much more ancient being. But as a way, Kuan Yin feels like a person's goddess, if that makes the most sense. To me, it kind of does. Like, her energy comes from people for people. I'm not saying she wasn't always a goddess. She, that energy, her being has always been here. But people have put out a lot of energy into creating who she is through that, that Buddhist religion and all of that stuff. There's a huge cultural fellowship that she has, and she's here for people. She cares about people. She loves people. She does care about nature, but she didn't create nature. That's what I'm getting at. She did not create nature. She did not create the fae. She did not create animals. She's here as a goddess to help people, to have compassion for people, to help people in need. She is protective of children and things like that. And that's where her motherly energy comes from. So I am like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this. There really is a complete separate different entity in both places. And I do think the energy still kind of comes from, it all comes from different places, but it's definitely, if you want to use the refracting light analogy, there's definitely different lives going on, different personas, different people from that energy. And I don't know, I just had a very wow moment. So I wanted to share that. And, I don't know if it helps anybody or if anyone finds it interesting, and maybe thoughts to ponder on your own deities and goddesses and gods and, things like that. And anyway, that is my story of my two goddesses. So they work very well as very caring people. Although that's another thing too. I do not see Anu as a person. I think she's just more like me. I can't explain it. She's more of like a presence of nature, is the best way I can describe it. Kuan Yin, I see more as a person with a deity aspect. That's the best way to describe it. Anyway, thank you for letting me share, and I will talk to you later. Goodbye.